I just played the worst Uncharted clone ever. While I had played loads of games before, not much hooked me to the point Uncharted did, where I was eagerly waiting for the next release in the franchise as soon as I was done with one. And it seems there was a lot more people like me who had a high level of affection towards the games because Unearthed, Trail of Ivan Battuta, was clearly a copycat of sorts. But before we get into all that, make sure you like, comment, share and subscribe. Without further ado, let's go. Semaphore are the developers from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia that you have to thank for Unearthed, and it was published by Seminole International. It was one of the first games on the PS3 to use the Unity engine, and the approach they decided to take was similar to Telltale back in the day, episodic. Episode 1 was released in the EU on PlayStation 3 on May 29th, 2013. Hey, that's my birthday. I'd have just turned 13. And anyway, in the following year it went global. But that's all we got. Episode 1. Even though episode 2 was announced in May of 2014 and was in active development, we haven't heard anything regarding it since then. In spite of this, however, we do have some details on what would have taken place. Supposedly, it would include events taking place while Ivan Battuta was still around, which obviously means additional playable characters. But as I said previously, that never got to see the light of day. And while we're at it, in case any of you weren't aware, yes, Ivan Battuta was in fact a real-life explorer. Between the years 1325 and 1354, he visited much of Africa, the Middle East, Asia and the Iberian Peninsula, and the devs decided to base much of this adventure on his travels and findings. Anyway, the premise for the game itself is actually quite solid. Arab fortune hunter Faris Jawad and his sister Danya embark on an exotic adventure throughout the Middle East on the trail of the famous Muslim explorer Ivan Battuta. Although, as you can expect with a game like this, the route won't be plain sailing. Together they would have to overcome a group made up of a militia leader, a weapons dealer and a rich antiquities smuggler who want the same thing. When it comes to how they tell the story, they don't even try to hide the Uncharted inspiration. The beginning is blatantly a copy the homework and use the thesaurus to change a couple of words type deal. In the sense that Faris starting off shot and wounded in a tense situation is wildly reminiscent of the train sequence at the beginning of Uncharted 2. Not only that, after said encounter, both titles do a flashback allowing the player to experience what led the protagonist to that moment. Anyway, back to the plot. After getting to a climax, where he enters a room trying to rescue his sister as Daniel was tied up in a room with the antiquity smuggler Quinton. The game goes back 3 weeks prior to these events unfolding. The siblings are in Egypt looking to find a hidden treasure supposedly located within the tomb of Pharaoh Amos. Faris proceeds inside alone. After solving puzzles and avoiding traps, he manages to find it. That's when some enemies infiltrate the tomb, however. So Faris is forced to showcase his shooting skills in order to get back to his sister, beat up the leader of the mercenaries who goes by the name of Osgur, and shooting their way out of there in a fun set piece on quad bikes. They then get a phone call from someone called Rashid Al-Kalabi, inviting them to Morocco to present to them a diary left behind by Ivan Battuta. Now, I don't know about you, but a mysterious phone call inviting me to another country is quite suspicious and a cause for concern at the very least. But it's a game, so we'll let it slide. Once they arrive, he explains to the duo why he's so aware of Ivan Battuta's travels. Turns out he's a descendant of a writer for the Sultan who documented his travels. However, when they get back to Rashid's place, they find a thief running off with the diary in his hands, so Faris chases after him. As Faris catches up to him, beats him into submission and is ready to extract information from him, the thief gets sniped. As a result, the police are now searching for where the gunfire is coming from and is pursuing Faris. Faris gets to Rashid's car and drives it out of the city to get away from the oncoming police. Despite the fact that the thief didn't have the diary in his hands anymore once Faris caught up to him, fortunately Rashid tells him that he keeps a copy of it, conveniently in the glove compartment of his vehicle. And that is the end of the first episode. I know, very anticlimactic. But I guess that's what happens when this is just the setup for the story. I mean, I don't know how many episodes there were meant to be, but this is literally just a setup. Nothing more, nothing less. The characters and their relationships are fairly well established from the get-go. The sibling relationship Faris and Danya share is an adorable one, with Danya being the more sensible one and Faris taking up the responsibility of the silly brother, always cracking jokes and making one-liners, and to be honest, thanks to the half-decent voice acting, the humour works. Or at least it did for me. And that, for me, is surprisingly essential in an Uncharted clone. So let's get into the gameplay department then, shall we? Before getting started, if you so wish, you can calibrate a motion controller, but I don't bother with that. With it being an action-adventure title that resembles Uncharted, it would come as no surprise to you that it's a third-person shooter with puzzles and climbing elements involved. Although nothing particularly special, the shooting is acceptable. However, the hitboxes can be off at points and there's no melee combat. Actually, well, there is, but you can't just start punching someone when you run out of bullets. There are dedicated melee encounters where the game turns into a fighting game, which isn't ideal because I suck at fighting games, despite the fact I thoroughly enjoy them. Back to the gunplay though, the grenades are a joke, you can barely aim them, and looting ammo and new guns from corpses are ridiculous. There's nothing but a small outline of the gun to indicate what gun it is, which, as you can imagine, causes trouble during combat encounters when you're searching for ammo for your particular gun. The puzzles are overly simplistic and the climbing mechanics are stiff and janky at the best of times, and there have been several occasions where game-breaking bugs have happened while climbing. I found it funny more so than annoying, but if the game was any longer, no word of a lie, I may have spontaneously combusted. When it comes to the driving mechanics, the steering's overly sensitive, at least in my opinion, so you can quite easily oversteer, not to mention there's quite a bit of popping present when driving, and calling the manner in which enemies fly off the quad bike one shot laughable is putting it lightly. There's more content to the game than just the story though. However, the font is so small that it can be difficult to navigate the menu or even just see how much ammo you have left. But anyway, if you really squint your eyes, you'd notice that there's also a survival mode where you can choose a character from the game and you have to endure wave after wave of undead mummy attacks. Which is a fun tie into the game's themes as opposed to doing what every other game does and make a zombie horde mode. So props for putting their own spin on an already established game mode. Ironic, right? Considering it was criticised for unoriginality. Besides that, there are some other cool bonus extras to enjoy as well. Concept art, renders, storyboards, animatics, cutscenes, character gallery and treasures, it's all here. And as if that's not enough, the trailer for the movie Journey to Mecca has been squeezed into here. And I've never even heard of the film, so I looked it up to find out why it's even in the game. And it depicts the first journey made by Ibn Battuta from Morocco to Mecca for the Hajj, an Islamic pilgrimage. In conclusion, despite the fact episode 1 got an 11 out of 10 on Metacritic, from an average of 6 critic reviews and was critically panned, I thought it deserved better than that. Not that it was a particularly good game, not even that it wasn't a particularly bad game, but more so that I actually managed to finish it without hating myself. And given the fact I previously made a video on the worst rated game of every year since the year I was born, I can guarantee you that's not always the case. The length of the game, the fairly detailed environments from the tombs of Egypt to the streets of Morocco, and the reasonably fun survival mode works in its favour. Even if the story is incomplete, the performance is whack and the graphics are outdated even for its time. Plus, if I'm honest, I found the Uncharted inspiration to be more endearing than anything else. Having said that, even I was surprised in 2018 when it was announced that Semaphore decided to do a sequel for the title named Al-Rakaz, after making the decision to ditch the episodic format. However, there hasn't been an update on the game since then, so who knows if it's even still in production. If it is though, there seems to be a gap in the market, as who knows when or if we'll get another Uncharted given how conclusive Uncharted 4 was. I mean, Unearthed was literally when Mum says we have Uncharted at home, but given the fact they're having another go at this, there's no real reason Al-Rakaz can't be the next big thing if they actually have learnt from their mistakes. Thanks so much for watching, drop a like if you enjoyed the video, comment your thoughts, let me know what other bad games you want me to play, and subscribe for more retrospectives and video essays from me. See ya!